much younger than that.
Thank you.
What was your occupation, if I may ask, before you started becoming a pundit?
Real estate.
Okay, Ben, I ask you one thing, and we're starting the show right now.
Eat more?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And on that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world according to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody. The downloads have just been exceptional. We are honored. We're climbing up the charts on iTunes. It's remarkable.
That lamp over there.
Yeah, thank you for interrupting me. And I want to remind everybody to get our email, benstein.substack.com. We have it back for round 2 with Evan Israel Brenner from stophating.com. And I encourage everybody to go and check out his site. It's a great site. And I thought about you today, Evan.
Jude, I have to try to turn on the light here. It's just too dark here. Just you guys keep talking for a moment. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's not distracting at all. But Evan, I actually thought about you today with, I was passing that store Kitson, and they have a real, this sign that says, I know Candace Owens, however you pronounce her name, they're, with the whole Chrissy Teigen thing. And apparently he's it's surviving Chrissy Teigen, and it's really hysterical. She's this bullier, and who has called for many people to be canceled. And I just found it ironic in Beverly Hills, which is, sort of on the conservative side. So I thought of your site, stophating.com. So welcome back. But of course, this show wouldn't be complete without America's humble servant, writer, provocateur, actor, saint, sinner, lover, father, grandfather, economist, but most importantly,
lawyer. Wait, lawyer. Did you say lawyer?
I probably did, but if I didn't, I apologize. I was distracted by your beautiful haircut. But of course, Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein, we salute you, sir.
God bless you. Of course,
welcome everybody in the chat. If you're in the chat tonight, listening to us on this special night we're doing this show. But right away, Ben, right off the bat, I want to get into this. We got into this last night. I want to get into this a little bit more. The former head of the FDA came out today and said, oh, you can't make this stuff up, but it goes to what I've said about the best and the brightest, that lab accidents, people getting, viruses getting out of labs happens all the time. And it's a frightening thought, Ben, that viruses get out all the time. And we have had over a year of insanity because viruses get out, Ben Stein, all the time.
Well, what I like is the fact that when Mr. Trump, our former president, mentioned something of this kind, the liberal media mocked him and criticized him and said this was ridiculous and this was insane. And only an idiot like Trump would say something like this. And now we have someone who's presumably an expert in this who's saying the exact same thing. So what the heck is going on here? I mean, I don't get it. We're trying to, we're just not playing sensibly here. And the left is just insists upon making up crazy rules of its own as we go along.
Yeah, and here's the bigger question. So you have, and he is an idiot, like Jonathan Karl coming out today and basically blaming Trump. And we spoke about this yesterday for not investigating. He's the reason they didn't investigate, because he had so many different crazy theories about.
Remind me, I'm sorry, who is Jonathan Karl?
He's from ABC, and I believe he was the White House reporter during the Trump administration. And he was on somebody today, and he's blaming Trump. They're blaming Trump for them not doing the investigation. And Evan, and I want to get to Evan, and it's this form of insanity of it's like sort of reverse Stockholm syndrome, Ben, if that makes any sense. And it's almost like they felt like they were held captive by this guy, and they couldn't investigate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're constantly taking the counter position just to be anti anything. It's like it's a joke. If Trump had a cure for cancer, they would reject it and call him he's anti-cancer. Like it's some crime. And it's the same thing. No matter during his presidency, whatever position he took, they automatic knee-jerk reaction of those who were opposed to him on the left was to just completely take the opposite position. And when you see it today, even if those same positions are held by people on the left, it gets a complete pass or it's applauded. And on the exact same issue.
I think that this is indeed a real problem, and a real problem in governance generally, which is that if you have a person who is well liked enough to be elected, and yet the media is stonewalling him endlessly on every single issue, he is going to have trouble getting things done. Although he did get, seemingly, at least according to what I have read, a great many judges appointed. But what I wonder is, with all the pro-Trump judges or judges that appoint Trump where they are, why are we not getting more judicial interest in certain allegations, whose name may not be said, having to do with the election?
Because Ben, you raise a great point. So they get all the judges supposedly from that thing called the Federalist Society, right?
Well, not all, but a lot.
But a lot. So I think at this point we have to be led to the assumption that they're part of the swamp. They're nothing but a bunch of they're part of the problem, not the solution. And I think it's time, like you were discussing last night, what are conservatives, visions going forward? One of them should no longer be listening to people like the Federalist Society, because that they couldn't find that Trump, what was it, over 200 judges, Ben, he appointed.
Way over 200.
Way over 200 judges, and 3 on the Supreme Court. And you're right, not one judge would hear anything, and that's a really frightening thought.
It's frightening that they wouldn't even hear it. I keep saying this, and I'll say it again. I am a lawyer, although I am mostly a doctor. I am a lawyer, and I am as a lawyer. I will tell you that the most strange, far fucking out, man, cases come before courts, and you think the courts can't possibly hear them, and then they do. So what's going on here? Why is it that nobody would hear these allegations about voting irregularities? Nobody would hear them. Not one.
You mean Ben? You mean voting regularities to the people of YouTube?
Yes, voting regularities, improperly called irregularities.
Sorry.
From these people that what they uncover could be worse than what's hiding. And that's sort of a justification for not looking at these things, because maybe the thinking is that if they investigate people, if they open up that can of worms, that could really lead to something so horrific that they're scared of it. Not that I think that that's right. I think whatever is the truth needs to be exposed. But I'm just trying to understand what it is that would lead people to not take a look at things that are so needing to be looked at, that's right in front of their faces.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because at some point, or early in the judicial process, right after the election, after a totally fair and free and honest election, some judge or some lawyer said, if they do start looking, and if they do start finding the kind of irregularities that certain psychotic lunatics have alleged, then they're going to have to really open up the political thicket for very thorough investigation. And that's going to mean a big, big change in what was going on in the United States hitherto. And that is a scary proposition that even very sensible and powerful Supreme Court justices might be afraid of. There is this phrase in law which is the political thicket, and judges want to stay out of the political thicket. A thicket is a thick band of forest. They really wanted to stay out of that, apparently, such that even when hundreds of completely fake and insane allegations of voter irregularities were made, they wouldn't listen to them. That's pretty damn unusual.
So you both raise great questions and great points, but one, and Evan, you're talking about this, and Ben, you're speaking about this too, of what's next, right? So Trump predicted this, right? He said this to be the truth. The media didn't investigate because it was Trump saying it. How could it be true? And now you look at other things. You look at the FISA courts, like Ben said. You mentioned voter regularities. Maybe eventually Hunter Biden. There's eventually going to be a point, Evan, where they can't stop the the water main break, like that happened in Georgia.
Well, I think
Go ahead.
people who are the other side, for example, who acknowledge that these things need to be looked at, I think we have a better chance of getting certain things scrutinized. But if we're so polarized that the people who are digging in on the trenches on the other side who don't want Hunter Biden investigated, not because they don't think he did anything wrong, but they think it's because they're going to lose political power, or their guy is not going to win, or it becomes a personal battle between you and them. They want to be the winner in an argument. So how do we get those people to just be fair enough to say, hey, let's look at these things that are credible? Like, what's wrong with that? Let's go.
We can't. We tried that. We with respect, Evan, we did try that right after the completely fair, honest, and open elections. We did try that, but just pointing out some very obvious strangeness in terms of too many votes going to one of the candidates relative to the number of people who are actually in the district. I mean, there were quite a number of cases, at least I believe, I could be totally mistaken, of cases where there are too many votes for one of the candidates relative to the inhabitants of the district. Seemingly,
I mean, you're reporting what those crazy right-wing conspiracy theories.
Right. So you're talking. So it is. So you would think that in that situation, you would, without any question at all, want to have some investigation, but we didn't. None.
No, and it goes to what Evan's saying even further, and I understand what he's saying, and you sort of, you weren't mocking laughing, you were just laughing the other night as I said, all we're looking is for something fair, and which will never happen, Ben Stein, as you well know. But at a certain point, as the ratings are in the tank, as you don't have a certain person to pick on or to play, it's there. We have eyes, Ben. We've seen what Hunter Biden did. We've seen what he's being accused of. Now they all say he's innocent, but he's innocent without investigation. Ben, at a certain point, there has to come to that point where rubber, where
the rubber meets the road. We have what we have is a very interesting situation, which is that if Trump does it, no matter how much evidence there isn't, he's guilty. Whereas if Hunter does it, no matter how much evidence there is, that he's innocent. It's kind of interesting situation. Very much like the situation in Eastern European or other communist countries in terms of the jurisprudence of what works. The jurisprudence works to justify the powers that be. A very, 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 very smart friend of mine from Yale Law School, a super genius named Duncan Kennedy, created, I think, the theory of critical legal studies, not race critical legal studies, just critical legal studies, in which he said the legal system existed to protect the plutocrats. And by the way, that was Duncan's genius, but it also had been started before at Yale by a group of legal realists who said the same thing, that the legal system really existed to protect the rich and not for any other purpose. And I'm afraid we now have a situation which is somewhat similar to that, where it exists to protect the beautiful people and the powers that be, and the left and it cannot be moved from protecting them. And seemingly that is what it does now.
Evan, I will give you the last word.
I think it's just, I can understand why politicians don't want these things investigated, because they want to stay in power. But what makes me extremely curious is regular Joe Schmo, Mr. Ploney on the street, what benefit do they have? They're not directly benefiting from hiding investigations.
Ben, he raises actually an exceptional point. Evan, I'm sorry to interrupt you. When I go to break, if you could log out and log back in for a second, that would be helpful, because your audio is a little off. But Ben, he actually raises a great point, is the average citizen basically doesn't matter. That's what he's saying, because the average citizen has the same, we're the average citizen. And not just on the right or the left, but most Americans are wondering why there are what's going on.
Well, I think we're wondering what's going on in many ways. I mean, we're wondering why the vice president, who was appointed with great solemnity by the president to make some sense out of the border crisis, why she has not yet even been there investigated. We're wondering why she hasn't had a press conference in something like 66 or 67 days. So we don't understand that either. We wonder why Mr. Biden cannot say a few words even about ice cream without making some pretty big mistakes. We're wondering about a lot of things. We're wondering about when the election took place that turned the government over to the media. We're wondering when the election took place that said that the popular vote and the electoral vote were insignificant. What counted was who's got the political power in big tech and in the powerful newspapers and news stations around the country. When did that election take place?
Never. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to That Man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein, a true national treasure, joined tonight by Evan Brenner from StopHating.com. No, you are a national treasure. And I mean that with all the sincerity in my heart. And I want to thank everybody that's watching tonight in the YouTube channel on our special night. But I also want to thank everybody that's been downloading the show. It's been exceptional. Climbing up those iTunes charts, it means the world to us. So don't forget, even if you watch the show here, you can still download the show, listen, give us a second listen in your car, or take your friend's phone and download it and have them take a first listen to the show. It's like the circle of life, and we and it's important. And we appreciate it. And don't forget, Ben's newsletter comes out 3 times a week, benstein.substack.com. On that note, I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to That Man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. And we were discussing before the show, I think a question that nobody really is asking, Ben, is you are one of the biggest animal lovers in the world. You truly are. There's nobody that loves dogs, that loves. You and your wife have donated more to animal charities than anybody I know combined by probably 10. And if anybody I know would never want animals being tested in labs, is somebody like Ben Stein, especially nowadays when we don't need to as much as we used to at a certain point. Which leads me to the next thing, Ben. We have, nobody ever asked the question, as we're talking about asking the question, what the hell are these labs doing testing viruses, building viruses, mixing all these viruses together? And as the FDA guy said, they always have accidents. What are they doing, Ben? And why are we funding virus mutation?
Well, I think we discussed this a moment before the show went live, but if the other guys are doing it, we have to do it. I mean, it's just a measure of protection. What I was saying,
you know what you would say to me though, Ben, if I said that to you?
No.
It's a non-responsive answer.
No, it is a very responsive answer, because we have to have a means of defense and of retaliation. So what's puzzling to me is that I think you and I have discussed this before, and I think it's worth studying. This idea of germ warfare originated in Beijing. It originated with Mao Zedong, and I never heard of any other country talking about germ warfare. Even the Nazis did not talk about germ warfare. Yes, poison gas. They used it with horrible effect on millions of my brothers and sisters and cousins. But germ warfare, using germs as things that cause diseases, that seems to me to come out of the People's Republic of China, and that seems to be their mode of approaching things. But again, we talked about this, and I'm afraid that the answer to this is so frightening. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes to even bring it up. Like, Jeff, could you bring me a glass of water, please? We have a situation where the Chinese can play around with nerve gases, and if it leaks and 100 million, God forbid, Chinese people die, it's a bad thing. It's a terrible, unspeakably terrible, unspeakably, unimaginably terrible thing. But but to the Chinese leadership, they just go on with their day. I mean, Mao Zedong is said to have said at the beginning of the Cold War, if 100 million Chinese get killed, we just keep going on. Where if 100 million Americans get killed, that's the end of them. So I'm afraid they have a different calculus about life and death from ours, and so that even if we do develop some really terrible nerve gas weapon, that might not stop them.
What, by the way, Evan, you're getting compliments on your website in the chat, but what say you about this?
Well, I think the question that's really on all of our mind is, what is the official position of our government funding these projects? Why? What are we trying to achieve by gain of function, as they call it, research? Why are we trying to make a deadlier flu virus? What is the end purpose of that?
Again, I think the end purpose of it must be that if some other enemy appeared, we would be able to knock them out with this. I mean, if, for example, the Russians, who are incredibly capable, smart people, thought of some very, very deadly virus, that we would have an even deadlier one to use on them. Because I think, as cruel as the communist regime there has been, unspeakably cruel, I think they would pause at the thought of 100 million Russians being killed. I don't think the Chinese would pause at 100 million Chinese being killed. I know that's a terrible, terrible thing to say, and I hope I'm wrong about that, because I know some very fine Chinese people. But gosh, their callousness about human life is really something to take your breath away.
So, but why, in that, if that's the scenario, would we be funding the labs in China? Why wouldn't we be doing it here in America for our own benefit? That's a frightening question.
It may be because the Chinese were so far ahead of us in this area of research that we wanted to climb onto their bandwagon, and they said they would let us on, and they would let us see what they had been doing. But they may have been hoodwinking us. They may have actually been thinking, well, the U.S. has the best scientists in the world. Maybe we will do better ganging up with them.
But you're also, what you're bringing up is what some people would call assured mutual destruction.
Mutual assured destruction.
Mutual assured destruction. And but I want to get to what you're saying, and I totally get the merits of, or I get what I know you don't believe that you're saying why you think it's done. But in the same time, as I brought up before, and to people we do talk before the show, I brought up Joseph Mengele. And this is very Mengele-esque. And for people that are not familiar with Joseph Mengele, one of the most, what he did with cloning on human bodies, and Ben, he's studying. He was
the chief doctor of the SS in terms of using various methods to kill Jews and other undesirables, or deplorables, as the Democrats might call them, in the Nazi period in Germany. A truly horrifying human being
who experimented on the living.
What?
Who experimented on the living.
Oh yeah, experimented. Yes. Experimented in unspeakably, unimaginably cruel ways on the living. Unimaginably cruel ways. And I think it is believed by some that we helped him escape from Europe after World War II.
I wouldn't doubt it, to get to Argentina. And if anybody's ever interested in seeing a movie, it was not a factual movie, most of it, but a movie that frightened me, Ben, Stein, for many years, was The Boys from Brazil with Gregory Peck. One of the most frightening movies
terrifying.
You will ever see. But that being said, Evan, it's a frightening thought. No matter how we rationalize this in our heads, it's a frightening thought to think that what we're doing with viruses, what unelected, and I think, Ben, this is the thing, what unelected officials, Evan, are doing. This is the frightening part, with zero oversight.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Evan, can you talk? And then I would like to tell you something really will curl your hair.
Please
go ahead. I was just going to agree with Judah what he was saying there, that's exactly what's going on. We don't know what's going on. We don't know why they're doing it. I think there's so much hidden from us about what's going on. I mean, I can only imagine. You look at, for example, AI technology, and we're getting it in the form of video games and, things that they can sell to us. But that leads me to believe, I think, as anybody would assume, that what they have, and I'm talking about the developers behind closed doors have, is 100 times more powerful and not being used for video games. And that's maybe similarly what's going on with all of this viral research.
Well, the parts I was going to tell you that will curl your hair is that there are places, there are installations of the U.S. government where they are experimenting with chemicals. And by the way, the word chemical doesn't scare me at all. Everything's a chemical. I'm eating some delicious Chef Boyardee ravioli right now, and it's a delicious chemical. Chemical. We have parts of the government that are experimenting with chemicals. They're totally out of control of elected officials. They might as well be occupying space on the moon that nobody knows about. I mean, so much of the government's activities are just hidden in items in the budget, and nobody knows what they're doing. They're not having hearings. Nobody's watching over them.
And what do you call this stuff, like black bag? What's that term that they use? Black something with the money that.
Yeah, I forget. It'll come to me in a minute.
But it's something interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Independence Day, but there was a great scene in the movie, Ben, as their Earth is being attacked by the aliens, and it's uncovered that we had one. And Bill Pullman, who plays the president, says, "How are you paying for this?" And Judd Hirsch goes, "You really think a toilet plunger costs $1,000? You really think this is a screwdriver costs $25,000?" And it was just the perfect line of like because where is the money coming from? There's zero oversight. And this is why during the Trump administration, Ben, when it was revealed what the FISA courts were doing, it's absolutely terrifying what our unelected officials, the absolute I want to say destruction that they're causing on our society, and it's evident right now with what we've faced.
Well, that. By the way, that's a very small part of the government. I mean, the government is an enormous thing, and this is a very small part of it. I don't think we should be tarring the whole government with this kind of brush, but there is certainly an awful lot of research, if we can call it that, being done that is not being supervised by anyone who has any responsibility to the electorate. More and more of the government, especially under the Biden administration, is not part of the democratic process. It's just being done by what the beautiful people and the powers that be in the media and in the political process think should be. It's not being supervised by elected officials. The voters have just been cast aside.
You actually brought up something before the show, and I was, as you always say, I know I get the stories quicker than you, but you were actually, I didn't realize the building that Israel blew up was if you could just talk about that quickly, because
there was a big building. They call it a skyscraper. I don't think it would reach what we would call in the U.S. skyscraper level, but it was a building maybe 15 stories. We have this funny idea that the Palestinian refugee camps are bunches of huts and tents baking in the desert sun. No, they're fully developed and built, and they're made of reinforced concrete, and some of them have air conditioning and so forth. But this was a big building, one of the biggest buildings in Gaza, and in it were the offices of the Associated Press and CNN and various other media outfits. But also in the building, according to the Israelis, were the offices and laboratories of the Palestinians that were making devices to kill with chemicals Jews, and also devices to foil the Israelis' Iron Dome project. And that's what Israel was trying to destroy when it knocked down that building.
I had no idea that they were doing chemicals there. I figured, obviously the other things, and obviously nothing out of them I trusted. But Evan, I will let you get the last word or questioning, because you do ask some amazing questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's the first that I had heard of that situation in Gaza. I know that they were firing rockets from that building. I think there's even some video of some of the newscasters kind of laughing about it and saying, "Oh, is that what that is? What they're firing from underneath us?" And they're launching rockets, and you see how it gets painted. Oh, these rockets are the equivalent of a rubber band being shot into Israel. But that's the first that I had heard of the chemicals.
Well, I don't remember where I read this, but I'm endlessly reading things on the internet. So,
Ben, I'm sure you're 100% correct. It's
well, I might be right, I might be wrong. But by the way, those rockets that they're describing as like a rubber band, some of them, a lot of them are what are called, I believe, 4.5-inch rockets. They are densely packed with high explosive. If one of them blew up anywhere near you, you're dead. Anywhere near you. So I mean, they're not firing. They're not firing off cherry bombs. These are serious weapons.
Yeah, they pretend that it's some kind of completely unfair fight, as if that's an excuse to attack somebody. Well, we're fighting with inferior technology. It's like if I try to stab you with a kitchen knife and you have a gun and defend yourself, somehow, I'm in the righteous because I have a lesser weapon. It's an insane argument.
No, that's actually
it's insane on the subject of Israel.
Ben, that's actually a great way of saying it. It's like that's what people are saying. It's okay to stab somebody with a knife if if the other person has a gun.
Well, that was Evan's point. It's a very, very, very good point. And I mean, it's always described in the media when these showers, these huge numbers of rockets are being fired at the Israelis, as if these were when they hit the ground, they went off like cap pistols. No, they don't go off like cap pistols. If they hit a fairly good sized building, they knock it down.
Yeah.
And amazingly, the Biden is doing one more thing today, Ben and Evan. He's going back on. You see, and I brought this up the other night.
Well, wait a minute, you didn't say what he's doing.
No, because I want to bring. I brought this up the other night. I brought up. Okay, listen. You disagreed with Trump on the climate stuff. We get it. You want to get back into the Paris Climate Accords and waste all our money. National security isn't necessarily at risk, or foreign security or people's lives aren't necessarily at risk. But today he decided to give more money to the Palestinians. And
I didn't see that. My God, where was that? My God, wait, I did see that.
And Ben, remember, it's Sunday, so it's a perfect time to do that type of story, to do that type of dump of a story where they're going to give him billions and billions of dollars.
Not billions and billions, but enough for them to do a lot of damage.
More than that, but remember where the money goes. It's not going to education. It's going to the families of the shaheeds, as they call them. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's going to.
And by the shaheeds are the killers.
Yes.
Yeah, they're people that are willing to die or do die while killing the infidels.
I got to tell you, I love these discussions. I really do. I really learn from these things, and I'm frightened by these conversations, and I love them at the same time. But Ben, that's what's going on right now. Is people are looking, they are making decisions that it's sort of frightening to go back in time and to do these decisions just because you hate a man. Because you hate a man, you are willing to get back into the Iran nuclear deal. You're willing to talk to the Iranians, Ben, who literally Trump decimated them with all the things he did. He isolated them. And you're basically saying, Ayatollahs, come back into power. Let's give you more strength. And that's frightening.
So your point is a brilliantly taken point. How can you hate a man so much that you will help mass murderers kill innocent people? And Iran has already said, we don't want this nuclear weapon just for the heck of it. We want it to create a second Holocaust in an afternoon. That means they would drop 5 or 6 of them at the most on Israel. Goodness, that's it.
No, Evan.
Yeah, I was going to say, the Iranians are Shia Muslims, and I believe they have in their belief system, they have a similar concept to what is like the Messiah in Judaism or Christianity even. and that they believe in that there's going to be this person who returns called the Mehdi. And this person will come at the conclusion of a massive destruction of the world. So part of their ideology is to bring about this massive end of the world, so to speak. I don't think too many people are aware of it. And I mean, they're religious fanatics, the rulers of Iran. It's not like the people there are not. I know a lot of Iranians, great.
Well, you and I live in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
But us is Iranian. But they're Iranian Jews. They don't hate Israel. They're Jewish.
Yeah. And even the Iranians that are here that are not Jewish, I mean, they fled for a reason too. You know, they were going to get killed just alongside the Jews because they weren't part of the genocidal lunacy that took over Iran.
And took it over with the help of Jimmy Carter, who said he could reason with the Ayatollah, he could do business with him, he would be fine. And the Shah was there, and so the Shah said, we can stop these crowds in the street. We
Shoot
can
them down.
stop them cold. We can shoot some of them, put the others in prison camps. And Jimmy Carter said, we're not going to support you. We'll send a plane to take you out of the country. And then when they took this poor man out of the country, they wouldn't really give him any rest. He was dying, and they wouldn't really give him a place to stop and get medical care. It was just heartbreaking to see how cruelly they treated this man, who was one of our only friends in the Middle East.
And what's amazing, the point you bring up, and we've brought this up before, is that was in 1970. What was that? 1978 or 6?
I don't remember. I think 78.
So 1978. In 42 years, Ben, pre-Trump, no U.S. president. And I say this to Reagan. I say this to obviously Bush, Clinton, Obama. None of them. Everybody kept on making the same mistakes as far as foreign policy went in that region. They saw what happened with the Shah, and everybody thought, well, you could nation build, you could let the next guy in, and they didn't learn from their mistakes until President Trump came into office and realized that sometimes everybody would constantly say he cozies up to dictators. Well, Trump knows what happens when you get rid of a dictator in that region, Ben.
Yeah. Well, Trump was the last president we've had, and I hope and pray he's not the last president, who had some common sense. If you have a country whose foundation is the mass murder of the Jews, and then the Americans, that comes next, they're not going to suddenly change and become nice guys. They're not going to become the British House of Parliament.
No, you're Evan, go for it.
Yeah, I think that Trump's entire game plan towards the Middle East was, first of all, understanding them a lot better than I think previous presidents had. And he understood that the one thing that they all respect over there is strength. And when you act in a manner that's strong, they respect you or they fear you. And you know, the media was going crazy, for example, when Trump was saying he's going to move the embassy to Jerusalem and formally recognize Israel as the capital. They said, oh, this is World War III. All hell's going to break loose. They're going to go nuts. It's the end of the world. And what happened?
Nothing.
They all were like, whoa. And that's why for 4 years, my brother said this to me, and I think it's great. He said, for the last 4 years, the only time you heard Israel in the news was when they were having some kind of medical breakthrough or they were making a peace deal with a neighboring Arab country. That was it. 100 days into this presidency, we have all-out war and chaos.
No, brilliantly said, Evan. And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to That Man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody that's listening into the YouTube chat on this fine night. Your comments are welcome. Remember, everybody, if you just tuned in, to download that podcast, The World According to Ben Stein, Amazon, obviously iTunes and Google and Stitcher and everywhere else the kids are downloading from. And also to get Ben's email, benstein.substack.com. But don't forget, also follow him at spectator.org. You could also follow Evan Brunner, who's joining us now, who asked some, I got to tell you something, Evan, you're really fun to have on because you ask some really poignant questions and you know history, and It's refreshing for the two of us. I could see Ben.
And we enjoy having you on very, very much.
Thank you. I love being here. Thank you.
We truly enjoy your company. You have the Stop Hating Project, stophating.com. Ben, somebody actually raised a great point, and they said the left is based on hate, right? In the chat, they said the left is fully based on hate.
I would say envy so much, not so much hate as envy. Well, envy and hate are very similar things.
Either one, hate or envy. And I want to ask you, so growing up as a product of the 80s, this isn't a knock. It truly isn't. I don't knock people for, but you had a lot of people in certain coalitions that belonged in the Republican Party that too weren't necessarily the most loving organizations known to man. The evangelical movement of today isn't what the evangelical movement of yesteryears was, Ben. Like, we love Mike Huckabee. We love him. But, when I was growing up, you had the Sunday morning preacher man, the Jimmy Bakkers, the Jimmy Swaggarts, people that weren't the most loving figures known to man, Ben. And so I could understand people sometimes thinking, but I have never seen such hate by so many in one party. Have you?
Not in the United States of America. In Germany, yes. In Russia, yes. In China, yes. But no, not in the United States of America. No, the Democrat Party of Nancy Pelosi, of what's the name of that guy who used to be so incredibly fat and then became very thin, the African-American guy?
Jerry Nadler?
No, African American guy.
But Jerry Nadler was the same thing.
I know, but this is a guy. I've run into him in the waiting rooms.
Al Sharpton.
Al Sharpton. Yeah. The anger of those people is just terrifying, blood curdling. Really, just blood curdling. I don't even know what to make of it. It's so blood curdling.
There was a great article written by a guy named Jason Whitlock. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's actually a sports commentator primarily, and he wrote that the election of 2020 was a battle between love and hate. He said the people that are voting for Trump or supporting Trump, they love him. They love his policies. They love America. They love what he's about. And the opposition was just, they hate him. They hate his policies. They hate America. They hate, it was so dead on. I mean, I really highly recommend this article, Jason Whitlock.
It's a very, very good point. It's a very, very good point. And of course, the point about, again, that's really terrifying is we have people in such very high positions who hate America. I mean, we have people in very, very high positions who don't love the country, whose constitution they are sworn to uphold and protect. That's scary.
Yeah. And by the way, for the record, Jason Whitlock, who is Black, is very anti-BLM. And I believe today, officially, Ben, the BLM flag was flying over all our embassies. It's like a joke. And I said it the other day. It'd be like if they were flying. It's a religion in a sense, much like Scientology, based on brought on by a joke. An absolute joke, this Black Lives Matter stuff, and that we're flying this flag over the embassies, Ben, that they take Winston Churchill bust out of the White House once again, and they fly the BLM flags over our embassies. I don't know. It's really
terrifying. It's blood curdling. Although you can, I must say, I don't want to go back to Mr. Obama, and I don't have any particular love of Mr. Obama, but I understand why he took down the bust of Winston Churchill, because his father was supposedly from Kenya. Kenya was a British colony. Winston Churchill was in charge of the British government. He was very much in favor of keeping Kenya as a state of the empire and not giving it its freedom. So I can understand why he would take down the bust of Winston Churchill. But the Black Lives Matter flag, that's crazy. I mean, this is based on an astonishing misunderstanding of what's going on in America. Yes, way too many Black people are being killed by violence. There's no doubt about that. It's heartbreaking. As my incredibly wonderful wife, the world's finest human being, would say, it's heart-rendering. But they're not being killed by the police. They're being killed by Black gangbangers. They're being killed by other Black people. So the idea that the police are waging a war, a genocidal war against African Americans, is just so mistaken. It's almost unbelievable.
I'm laughing because you're right, and it's an excellent point. I'm laughing because somebody wrote in the chat when you were sharing about Al Sharpton, they said Al Roker, and I thought that was a very pithy line, Brady, very smart. Ben, there's a great piece today in Breitbart News written by Joel Pollack, where he said the Jews need the NRA more than they need the ADL. And I thought it was an incredible piece. I want you to go speak about that because it's the ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League, who doesn't speak for us, who's an incredibly leftist organization that claims to be that they're not. But the point being is the NRA. The NRA is now needed more than ever, Ben.
Yeah, the NRA, National Rifle Association, is a group which wants to make sure the Second Amendment is not abolished. And I think it is extremely important that Americans be allowed to own guns. Obviously, we don't want people who are violent. We don't want people who are bad actors. We don't want people who have criminal records or severe criminal records. Obviously, running a red light would not count. But we don't want people who are dangerous to have guns. But we want every American who wants to have a gun, or as many guns as he or she wants to have. And I keep thinking, I'm a Jew. I'm an American, first of all. Above everything, I'm an American. First thing is, I'm the husband to the world's most wonderful human being, my wife, Alex, the goddess of goddesses. Second, I'm an American. Third, I'm a Jew. The Jewish part is incredibly important. I would like for every American Jew to have a gun. In fact, lots of guns. I keep thinking, what if all the Jews in the Lodz ghetto had guns? What if all the Jews in Riga had guns? Yes, it would not have stopped a mechanized armored battalion of the Schutzstaffel from coming in, but it would have made them think about it twice.
God, I love hearing you say this. It's so true, and it makes me want to cry that people are. This is, again, Ben and Evan, we're going to this thing. People hate the NRA so much that they're willing to die.
Yeah,
for their hatred.
I was saying that a lot of the people that are screaming that we should abolish guns are also screaming the government is evil and corrupt, especially during Trump's presidency. Oh my God, it's like the Nazi regime. But let's take away all the guns from the people and only have this evil regime have all the guns. It's like, it's as if they didn't think for 1 second.
We do not want the government, even the government of the United States, which is the greatest country that man has ever created, to have a monopoly on violence. Yeah. The whole point of libertarianism, and I am not a libertarian, but the whole point of libertarianism is that we do not want the government to have a monopoly on violence. We want people to be able to protect themselves from marauders, but also in the horrible, unspeakable, very, 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 very unlikely event that we had a government that was similar to the Nazi government. And I say it's incredibly unlikely. We'd like them to be able to think inside all these Jewish households are not only people who are davening and looking pathetic and weak and wearing weird headgear, but they've also got a lot of AR-180s.
Especially, you're right, you have a mezuzah on your door, you're pretty much marking yourself. At that point, you might as well get some self-defense. But somebody raised a great point in the chat, Ben, and I want to ask you when this happened, because the same thing happened with Israel, with Arafat, when he was considered a civil rights leader in a sense. When did civil rights leaders, when did it become from civil rights leaders to BLM? When did the civil rights leaders become criminals?
There's a famous line from Thomas Jefferson, who was, to be sure, a slaveholder. There's no doubt about that. But Thomas Jefferson says, whoever expects society to function as a democracy in a state of ignorance is expecting what never was and never will be. Well, the leadership of this country has been steadily growing more and more ignorant, and that includes the black leadership, such as it is, and they do not understand what it is to have a monopoly on violence in the ghetto, in the inner city, and have that monopoly belong to the Crips and the Bloods or whatever else they're called. They don't understand it, or they understand very, very well that there's no money to be made from demonizing the Crips and the Bloods. If they put up ads and commercials and so on saying the Crips and the Bloods are killing each other, we'd like you, Mr. and Mrs. Weingarten, over in Brentwood, no offense, down in Brentwood Park, to chip in $100,000 to stop the Crips and the Bloods from shooting each other. The Weingardens are going to laugh like mad. But if you say, give us $100,000 to fight those evil white cracker policemen, then they get the money.
It's true. I think listen, the one thing that I will acknowledge that they do well is their branding. And because here's the thing, the term Black Lives Matter, who would disagree with that? Of course, Black Lives Matter. So, but what you have is you have the saying Black Lives Matter, which everybody can get behind, and you have the actual movement. If they called the movement what it was actually about, just as you said with, raising money for Crips and Bloods, nobody would support it. So what they do is they give it a great name that people who are not looking into what it really stands for can easily get behind. And that's the winning formula.
Brilliant formula. And as I say, if they're going around to wealthy people, wealthy liberals, and saying, help us fight the police, those police, those Gentile police who might be Nazis for all we know when you're not looking, then they get the money. If they say fight the Crips and Bloods who are getting high out of their minds when they're not demonstrating or testifying, they're not going to get any money.
He actually, Evan, you also raise a better point. Everything you said is completely true, but they did such a good job with branding that you can't say anything against it.
Exactly.
Because you can't, if you're saying, I disagree with your organization, then Ben, you're saying, well, Black lives don't matter, which is absolutely a real crock. And
but they don't matter. They don't matter to the Crips and the Bloods. They do matter to us. I mean, my wifey, the world's most wonderful human being, and I were demonstrating and working and raising money for the Black Panther Party before any of those people running Black Lives Matter was born, before a single one of them was born. Anyone is a singular pronoun. And we get no credit for that at all. We're racist pigs.
So I have a question for both of you, because a lot of this has to do with indoctrination, and we know this is, it's not the universities anymore. We know it's not the high schools. It's starting at the kindergarten level. And Ben, you're a grandfather who has a granddaughter in school. Evan, I think you're a father that has kids in public schools. I want to get to Ben. How do you counteract? How do you counteract what they're being indoctrinated 7 hours a day?
Well, my granddaughter, I hope, is not being indoctrinated with this, because my son is a quite intelligent, sensible young man. I think that when the subject comes up, he tells her the truth. His mother is a very, very, very intelligent and incredibly beautiful, just astoundingly beautiful young woman. And I think she understands a little better. Her grandfather on her father's side, not me, my mother's side rather, is one of the most sensible people on racial issues that I have ever met in my life. So I think she's to some extent insulated. But
here's the problem with that, Ben, and I'll get to Evan. You're right. She might have everybody on the outside, but all kids, and obviously many adults want one thing, and that's to fit in. So even though their parents might be telling them this message is not factually correct and this is accurate, when they're in the classroom, they want to get along with the rest of their friends. So, all those studies, right? The Princeton study where everybody was, which is proven, it was bunk. But nonetheless, people scarily want to fit in. So as much as, and Evan, I don't know what you're dealing with your children.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge because thank God, my kids have good heads on their shoulders and they see through a lot of this. And also, I talk to them all the time, but they are faced with this constantly. Um, you know, one of my kids, I won't say which one out of fear that, that they'll be discovered, but they'll sometimes take their phone and film the teachers and show it to
Oh,
me.
great. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, and it's
I
just
love that.
unbelievable. I mean, I've gone into the school on a few occasions because of some of the stuff that they are telling them. I mean, I remember when they sent out, I forgot what it was, when they send out that message to every phone. And
I don't know about that,
It's like, I
Evan.
guess if you're a parent, it's like the Amber Alert for
yeah,
parents.
exactly. And
But what was it, sir? Well, tell me what the
I
message
forgot
said.
exactly what it was, but it was something to do with, it was like a Trump something he did, and they were notifying the public about it. And the teacher at that time was saying, "Oh my God, this is so Trump to send a thing out. He's just going to start World War III." And I mean, this is what they're telling kids in, elementary school. I mean, and if they're not hearing, an alternative position to that, kids may be listening to their teachers. I mean,
So let me ask you a
you want
question.
your kids to listen to the
Terrifying,
teacher sort.
terrifying, terrifying, terrifying. I
Yeah,
want to add just as an addendum. My son and his wife are divorced. My son now has a new wife, and she is, so to speak, a stepmother of our granddaughter, and she is extremely sensible about everything. And I think any questions about any kind of social policy, she would have a very, very intelligent answer to.
but the question is, Evan, what did you say to the teacher? Because I think it's really important that people learn that you can confront
Yeah.
teachers, Ben.
Well,
I think that's people's biggest
yeah,
fear, or people don't even realize.
yeah. I mean, in my situation, I went in and I spoke with the principal, and I told him exactly what happened, and the principal agreed with me. I don't think the principal shares my political views, but at least he was reasonable enough to say this should not be happening in school where the teachers are imposing their political points of view on kids. It's just not the place for it. And especially when they're saying things like our president is going to start World War III. I mean, imagine if you're an 11-year-old, 10-year-old kid and your teacher is telling you the president of the United States is about to start World War III. I mean, it's just insane.
Okay, by the way, somebody made a comment, Ben, and I'll let you answer this, because somebody said this is only happening in urban schools. And I'm looking at both of you going, this is not only happening in urban schools.
Well, I don't know what he means by urban, but I know that our granddaughter, an absolutely wonderful child, the best kid in the world, goes to school in a town called Greenville, South Carolina. I don't know whether you call that urban or not. It's certainly not Brooklyn. But I will tell, if I may, I'll tell you how I confronted a situation like this long, long, long ago. In 1961 or two, I had an English teacher named Mrs. Feldsman, and we were talking about the Constitution, and the Constitution says all men are created equal. I mean, the Declaration of Independence, and then she had us put up quotations and headlines about resistance to school integration, and politicians saying very ugly things about African American people. And she said, "Now, what does this tell you about what kind of a country America really is, despite what it says in the Constitution?" And I raised my hand and I said, "Mrs. Feldman, that's the kind of question a communist would ask." And it so happened, by an incredible stroke that I had no idea of, that Mrs. Feldman was a communist. And the reason that she was teaching at our school had just started that year was that she had been fired from her previous job at another school because she had been named in certain congressional hearings as a communist. And she was really, really mad at me and sent me down to the principal's office or the vice principal's office. And I was suspended from school. And this woman, this is really, I kind of blackballed me from the Honor Society for this reason. My mother went in there and just about tore this woman's head off, because my mother was a very serious anti-communist. And it was an incredible stroke of luck for me that I was blackballed from I was a junior honor society, because then I didn't get into Harvard, and I hadn't wanted to go to Harvard. I wanted to go to school in New York because I wanted to be neat and in a place where there were lots of beautiful chorus girls. And that's why I wanted to go to school in New York.
And I got to tell you something. That's an amazing story, Ben Stein. That's one of the few stories that I've never heard before.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Mrs. Phelps, I hope and pray that she's no longer living because I don't want her suing me for libel.
And that's the whole point of the show, is getting the stories from the man that lived through it all. But Evan, I have an idea for you. You could take what you could take it, you could leave it. Because I think as we're going through this, there's not a program out there that teaches parents how to confront what's going on.
Yeah, but there are plenty of books, though. There are plenty of books.
There are plenty of books, but Ben, it's 2021. Not a lot of people are reading. People are more visual, and I think it would be a really cool thing to set up.
Reading is visual.
What?
Reading is visual. You don't do it with your ears. You do it with your eyes.
Thank you, Ben. But I also sometimes think, okay, I'll tell you what. We'll compromise. Evan, make a pamphlet.
Yeah, no,
and make videos about how parents.
I think the videos it's a great idea. It's a great idea.
Yeah, please don't steal it from me. We could work on it together with Ben Stein. I think that would be the coolest thing ever. Would be to work on something, how to teach parents how to go against. First of all, how to teach their children, how to teach their children not to be. Yes, Ben.
Teach your parents well.
True that. And I would love to see that. I think parents really need that. Time has run out amazingly fast. But that's what happens when you're having a good time, supposedly. I want to thank everybody that's been watching and listening and reading in the YouTube chat, because it's all the same. I want to remind everybody to get Ben's newsletter, benstein.substack.com. Sign up for it tonight. It comes out, I believe, on Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, if I'm not mistaken. Also, don't forget, download the podcast, even if you subscribe to the show and listen here. It means the world to us. Go to Evan's project, stophating.com. It's some amazing stuff. You're a really cool cat, Evan. You're an extra bonus to the show. You really are. You have a great amount of questions and thoughts, and you're extremely respectful. And I applaud you and I admire you. But of course, this show wouldn't be complete. You can find them at spectator.org. You can find them oftentimes at Newsmax. Of course, on Parler, at Ben Stein. And like I said, the newsletter, benstein.substack.com. He truly is America's teacher, America's humble servant, and a person that's got some of the greatest stories. And a doctor, and some of the greatest stories I've ever heard in my life. So Ben Stein, please take us out.
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourselves, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, their parents' hell will slowly go by. Well, anyway, I don't know. I don't want you to have nightmares, so I won't sing anymore.
And God bless. Remember, we won't see you Tuesday night. We'll see you back here Thursday night. Stay tuned. We'll keep you in the loop Thursday night, not Tuesday night. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your loved ones, tell everybody about the world according to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. You rock. Have a great rest of the week, everybody. God bless you all. We will see you soon.